Hello everybody and welcome to our First Aid on the Danger YouTube channel. My name is Niek and today we're going to talk about the white substance that we always see in the World War II movies. As soon as somebody gets injured, we see somebody, sometimes a medic, but it could be anybody actually, throwing in the white powder on somebody's wound. What is it and what does it do? If we take a look at, for example, Saving Private Ryan, in the scene where the medic gets shot in the stomach, we see that they use the white substance. I'm going to show you a clip right now so that you know what I'm talking about.
More Sulfa, Mellis. Listen to my voice. We're going to be all right. We're going to be all right. We're going to be all right.
Wait, you're fine. You're going on a hospital.
I got it. Up, I'm giving you a canteen. Come on. Pressure. Come on. Get you out of here. Put some pressure on it. It's going to be okay.
How's it look?
Some more for you. It's okay. It's all right.
How's it look?
It's going to be okay. Some pressure on it. Some pressure on it. Some pressure on it.
Okay, we've seen the white powder, and actually it's like this if we look at the pictures. And if we go to the Saving Private Ryan online encyclopedia, we see that they talk about sulfate powder. And sulfate drugs is the first treatment for bacterial infections, and it was found out in 1932. Sulfate was both carried in powder and tablet form, as you can see over here. And they say that what we see in this scene is sulfate powder being used. But the question, actually, the question that comes to mind if we go and take a look is it historically accurate that we see them using sulfate powder that late in the war? Because we talk about the 6th of June 1944 D-Day and the period after D-Day, so that is what we see. But if we go and take a look at the timeline, sulfate powder was found out in 1932 by a German biologist, and actually he just found it out by accident, and the first person that he treated was his own daughter. If we look at all the information, and actually the book here says, let me check it out. He found it out by accident, and he used the then not tested medicine on his own daughter's hand, which was badly injured and had a bad infection on it. And actually she got cured, so that means that the sulfate powder did its work. I'm not going to talk about too much into depth how sulfate powder came to existence, but what they did find out was that it doesn't work outside of the body, because what the sulfate powder does, it makes the conditions within the body which is not suitable for bacteria, so they cannot multiply. So the sulfate powder suppresses the ability for bacteria to multiply, thus giving your own body more time to fight off the infection. So that is what sulfate powder does. In 1939, the German scientist Gerhard Domagk, that was the one that invented it, actually won the Nobel Prize but didn't receive it because of the war going on and him not being so into the war as it is at the moment. So then if we go and take a look, because as I've told, is it historically accurate that they are using sulfate powder on the 6th of June 1944 or somewhere after the 6th of June, maybe the 7th or the 8th, that doesn't matter. Because there's something else that was discovered, and it's called penicillin. Yeah? And it was discovered actually in 1928 by Alexander Fleming. He was a Scottish biologist, but it didn't do anything with the penicillin until around 1944, when by the time of 1944 there was a mass production going on for penicillin, because it found out that it worked so much better than the sulfate powder does. And actually, by the 6th of June 1944, there was enough penicillin for every every man that went on the march to D-Day. So the question is, how big is the chance, or how big is the possibility that we would see sulfate powder still being used by the 6th of June 1944? That might be a very hard question to answer. I tried to find it out, because if we take a look, this was one of the leaflets about penicillin, and it's from the National World War II Museum, and thanks to penicillin he will be coming home. So I know that penicillin was used during the war, and especially in the Pacific. So if we see sulfate powder used in the Pacific, chances of that being used is quite slim, if I have to believe everything that I'm seeing here. But what did sulfate powder do? Let's say it was sulfate powder. Some people say that it has a way to clot the blood as well. No, it wasn't used for that. It was used for fighting off infections, and that is why it's so important that they use it as soon as possible. Why? Because during every war that's ever fought, infection is a problem because of the conditions and the environment the soldiers are fighting in. It's disgusting. Yeah, there's a lot of debris, there's a lot of mud, there's a lot of infection, there's a lot of feces of animals and people staying in a small confined space for a prolonged period of time. So pre-hospital infection control is very important, and sulfate powder was the first antibacterial product that would seem effective against infections. But later on they found out that penicillin did a better job in fighting off infection. Actually, penicillin was used to treat syphilis and chlamydia as well, because STDs were a big problem during the Second World War as well. Actually, during every war, when lots of men are overseas alone, they will try to find some female companionship, and that results in a lot of people getting, a lot of army personnel getting STDs. So that is a very big problem, and penicillin did a great job in reducing the people that were incapacitated for fighting during the war, because in the beginning of the Great War it was around 18,000 people per day that were incapacitated because of STDs, and a few years later on, thanks to penicillin, it was only 816. Still a lot of people a day, but penicillin did a great job in reducing that problem. As we know, penicillin is used quite a lot these days, which means that resistant bacteria strains are getting more and more frequent. Thus, the search for better antibiotics is still going on. Sulfate powder was both used in tablet form and in the powder form, and actually the powder form was used more because the tablet form you had to drink lots and lots of water. So most of the times the powder form was used, and it needed to be used before dressing up the wound. So in the scene where we see that we saw where they put lots of sulfate powder or maybe penicillin powder, because it's a kind of a gray area, because it would be more accurate if they used penicillin, because it was widely spread before D-Day, and actually every man had penicillin on him, if I believe everything that I see from the information that I get from the internet, and actually from the National World War II Museum as well. So what is the white substance? The white substance mostly is sulfate powder, but by 1944 most of the sulfate powder got placed over for penicillin because it worked better in fighting off pre-hospital infections. Both needed to be given as soon as possible to fight off infections, and actually both sulfate powder and penicillins are still used today, and pre-hospital antibiotic treatment is still a very important part of every medic in modern global war fighting or modern war. We still see that pre-hospital infection is a big problem and reduces the chances of survival drastically. So that means that in every protocol, medical protocol, there needs to be a place for antibiotics, pre-hospital antibiotics. So that is it. That is the big question that I wanted to talk about today. Thank you very much for watching the First Aid Under Danger YouTube channel, and I hope you enjoyed this video in which we've taken a little brief into history to find out what is the white substance that we always see in the movies, World War II movies. So it is either sulfate powder, but is it used after the 6th of June 1944? It should have been, most of the times, penicillin. So thank you very much for watching this movie, and that's the end of my message. So thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.